who's actually getting the most out of the ASUS TUF F16, who can safely walk away, and does the price make sense for a typical buyer who just wants a solid gaming and work machine? If you're on the fence, the biggest fear is ending up with a laptop that looks impressive on paper but ends up being a heavy, battery-guzzling beast you can't actually take anywhere. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon, and I'll walk through why the trade-offs matter before you hit add to cart. First off, the TUF F16 is built around a 16-inch FHD Plus panel with GSWNC and a hardware MUX switch. In practice, that means you get tier-free gameplay at 144 Hz without the latency you'd see when the display is forced to share the integrated graphics pipeline. I tested a few titles that are notorious for stutter like Cyberpunk 2077 and Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and the Switch really did keep the frame times consistent, even when I cranked settings to Ultra. For a creator who also edits video, that same smoothness translates into a more accurate preview window, which saves you time when you're cutting together 4K footage. Now, the heart of the machine is an Intel Core i7-14650HX paired with an RTX 5070. That combo isn't just a marketing headline, it actually delivers the kind of multi-core performance you need for rendering in DaVinci Resolve or running complex simulations in SolidWorks. In a side-by-side test with a 3060-based laptop, the TUF F16 completed a 10-minute 1080p export about 12% faster, and the difference became even more noticeable in a 4-hour multi-camera edit where the timeline stayed responsive despite having multiple effects stacked. The 64GB of DDR5 RAM means you can keep dozens of applications and large datasets open without watching the system start to swap to disk. The storage story is also worth a mention. 4 terabytes of SSD space sounds excessive, but for someone juggling a library of 4K video clips, game installs, and engineering project files, it actually eliminates the need for an external drive in most daily scenarios. The drives are NVMe, so load times are sub-second for most games and assets load instantly in Premiere. That said, the sheer capacity does add to the price, and if you're only planning to game and do light editing, you might be overpaying for space you'll never use. So who should buy this laptop? If you're a serious gamer who also does video editing, 3D modeling, or runs engineering software on the go, the TUF F16 checks a lot of boxes. It's especially compelling for people who need the extra RAM headroom for large CAD assemblies, something a 16GB or 32GB system would struggle with when you open complex parts. The MUX switch and GSWNC make it feel like a desktop monitor for gaming, while the RTX 5070 gives you ray tracing performance that's still viable for the next couple of years. For students in mechanical engineering or media production majors, the combination of raw compute and storage can replace both a workstation and a separate media server. On the flip side, the laptop isn't a good fit for anyone who prioritizes portability above all else. At 5.2 kilograms and roughly 0.8 inches thick, it's more of a desktop replacement you can lift into a coffee shop than a travel companion. Battery life reflects that reality. Under a mixed workload of gaming and editing, you'll see about 3 hours before the charger becomes a necessity. If you're looking for a fine and light gaming notebook that you can slip into a backpack for long flights, you'll be disappointed. Also, the fan noise ramps up noticeably when you push the RTX 5070 in sustained GPU-heavy tasks. It's not a silent workstation, so if you work in a quiet studio or shared space, you'll need to account for that. Another hidden trade-off is the keyboard. The RGB backlit layout is nice for aesthetics, but the keys feel more like a high-end mechanical keyboard than a typical laptop. That's great if you type a lot, but the key travel can feel a bit loud in quiet environments. The same is true for the webcam. While it's a 1080p sensor, it's positioned lower on the chassis, which can result in an unflattering angle unless you prop the laptop up. Price is where the conversation usually ends. The TUF F16 sits in the upper mid-range for gaming laptops, and you're paying not just for the RTX 5070 but also for the massive RAM and storage configuration. If you compare it to a similar spec machine that ships with 32GB RAM and a 1TB SSD, you're paying a premium for the extra headroom. That premium only makes sense if you're certain you'll use that headroom regularly. Think of running multiple VMs, editing massive 8K footage, or compiling large codebases while streaming. For a gamer who only plays a few titles and does occasional video edits, a laptop with a 3060 GPU, 16GB RAM, and a 1TB SSD would likely be more than enough and considerably cheaper. In summary, the ASUS TUF F16 is a purpose-built machine that excels when you need a blend of high-end gaming and professional workloads. Its strengths are the seamless GSWNC experience,